The sun beat down, a benevolent golden disk over the perfectly manicured lawns of Willow Creek, a suburban haven where dreams of white picket fences often came true. For 8-year-old Leo, his dream was far simpler, yet held all the vibrant promise of summer: a lemonade stand. Not just any stand, mind you. This was Leo's Lemonade Emporium, a hand-painted masterpiece of wobbly plywood and mismatched fabric, perched proudly at the edge of our driveway. He'd spent days on it, his small hands sticky from squeezed lemons, his brow furrowed in concentration as he mixed sugar and water, meticulously measuring each ingredient. His motivation was pure, almost impossibly so for a child his age. He wasn't saving for the latest video game console or a superhero action figure. No, Leo was saving up for a donation to the local animal shelter, hoping to buy blankets and food for the orphaned kittens he'd seen on their website. Every bright yellow sign, every perfectly sliced lemon, every gleeful giggle as a customer approached was a testament to his earnest, hopeful spirit. His first few days were a triumph. Friendly neighbors, dog walkers, and even the occasional delivery driver would stop, charmed by his infectious enthusiasm and the refreshingly tart lemonade. Dollars and quarters slowly piled up in his brightly colored cash box, each coin a tiny victory. The air hummed with the gentle buzz of summer, the laughter of children, and the clinking of ice in cups, painting a picture of quintessential American innocence. Everything was, by all accounts, utterly perfect. Then Mrs. Albright moved in. We first saw her as a blur of tightly pulled hair and disapproving frowns, marching briskly past Leo's stand, her gaze sharp, missing nothing. Her initial comments were subtle, almost whispers like a venomous bee circling a flower. "That sign. It's a bit close to the sidewalk, isn't it?" she'd murmur. Not to us directly, but loud enough to be heard. Or, "Such activity for a quiet residential street," her eyes narrowing at Leo's joyous customers. We'd smile, politely, thinking her simply a stickler for neatness, perhaps a little stressed from moving. We'd gently nudge Leo's sign a few inches back, make sure no drop of lemonade escaped his table, and carry on. But Mrs. Albright wasn't just a stickler. She was a self-appointed warden of Willow Creek's unspoken rules, and she had decided Leo's innocent venture was an affront to her meticulously ordered world. One afternoon, as Leo proudly counted his earnings from a particularly successful hour, Mrs. Albright stopped dead in front of the stand, her eyes, usually darting, fixed on me. "This is a residential area, you know," she stated, her voice clipped, devoid of any warmth. "Not a commercial zone. Some of us prefer peace and quiet, and order." Her gaze lingered pointedly on Leo's colorful sign and the small line of laughing customers. "I'll be looking into this," she finished, her voice a low, chilling promise before turning on her heel and marching away. As she disappeared, I noticed her pull out her phone, snapping a quick, almost predatory photo of the stand. A shiver ran down my spine, replacing the warmth of the sun. The idyllic hum of summer suddenly felt very, very quiet. With Mrs. Albright's thinly veiled threat hanging in the air, a familiar unease settled over me. I'd heard stories, seen the viral videos, the Karens of the world, empowered by obscure rules and an insatiable need for control. I wasn't about to let Leo's innocent venture become collateral damage in someone else's power trip. That evening, while Leo dreamt of happy kittens, I dove into the labyrinthine world of local ordinances. I spent hours online, navigating confusing government websites, cross-referencing city codes, and even perusing the HOA bylaws. Even though Willow Creek wasn't technically an HOA community, I knew some people tried to enforce their own versions. I called the city clerk's office the next morning, then the Small Business Development Center, and finally the health department, asking about temporary food vendor permits for minors. Each phone call was a maze of transfers and hold music, but I was relentless. I learned about obscure permits for temporary recreational vending, health and safety guidelines for food preparation, and even a special miner's business license that required parental consent and a clear outline of sales. It was far more bureaucracy than I'd anticipated for a humble lemonade stand, but with every piece of information, I felt a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't just about lemonade anymore. It was about protecting Leo's joy and proving that we were playing by the rules, even if they were ridiculous. I filled out forms, prepared a small, neat binder with all the documentation, and even had Leo sign a mock employee agreement for his own amusement, teaching him the importance of legitimate operation. Our diligence, however, only fueled Mrs. Albright's fire. Her complaints began to arrive, not as murmurs but as formal typed letters, sometimes slid under our door, other times arriving mysteriously via email from a newly established Willow Creek Community Standards address. She meticulously documented violations: excessive pedestrian traffic, noise pollution disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of property, unauthorized commercial activity in a residential zone, and even unsanitary conditions, despite our meticulous cleanliness. She sent copies to the city's Code Enforcement Department, the non-emergency police line, and once, bafflingly, to the local newspaper's anonymous tip line. The first time Code Enforcement showed up, a young officer looked utterly bewildered by the sight of Leo beaming behind his colorful stand. "Ma'am, we received a complaint about an unlicensed vendor," he asked, rubbing the back of his neck. I simply handed him my freshly organized binder. His eyes widened as he flipped through the permits, forms, and licenses. A chuckle escaped him. "Well, everything seems to be in order here," he said, handing the binder back with a slight smile. He gave a perplexed glance towards Mrs. Albright's house before leaving. The next time, it was a community police officer, equally confused. Again, the binder worked its magic. Each time, Mrs. Albright watched from her window, her face contorting in barely suppressed fury as the officials left, often shaking their heads. She became a pariah among the neighbors, who, amused by the lemonade stand saga, now actively avoided her, offering Leo extra tips and words of encouragement. But Mrs. Albright was beyond reason. We'd occasionally find passive-aggressive flyers on our mailbox about maintaining community standards, or a small dead patch of grass near the edge of our driveway, though never close enough to incriminate her directly. Her obsession grew, her tactics becoming more desperate and less subtle. One afternoon, as Leo was setting up, Mrs. Albright marched directly onto our driveway, ignoring the property line. She stood rigidly, arms crossed, glaring at us. "This farce has gone on long enough," she declared, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You clearly don't understand the rules. I'm calling the real authorities this time. This illegal operation is going to end, and you'll regret ever setting it up." She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over the dial pad, a triumphant, venomous look on her face as she made eye contact with me. My stomach clenched, knowing precisely what was coming. This time, she wasn't just complaining. She was bringing in the big guns. The blare of a distant siren sliced through the warm afternoon air, growing steadily louder, closer. Leo, mid-pour, froze, his small hand still clutching the pitcher. His eyes, wide with innocent fear, locked onto mine. A knot tightened in my stomach despite my preparations. I knew this was coming, but seeing the flashing blue and red lights round the corner, painting our quiet street with an ominous glow, was still a jarring sight. Neighbors, drawn by the wail, began to emerge from their homes, some with curious expressions, others with looks of concern, their eyes darting between the approaching patrol car and Leo's vibrant, utterly harmless lemonade stand. The cruiser glided to a halt right in front of our driveway. Two police officers, stern-faced and professional, exited the vehicle, their uniforms crisp in the sunlight. Before they could even take a step towards us, Mrs. Albright materialized, seemingly from nowhere, practically radiating self-righteous triumph. She bustled towards the officers, pointing a rigid finger at Leo's stand with dramatic flair. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she declared, her voice ringing with feigned urgency, loud enough for every peering neighbor to hear. "I've been telling them for weeks. This illegal operation has been disrupting the peace, creating traffic hazards and who knows what unsanitary conditions. It's an unlicensed business, a health hazard, a public nuisance." She paused, puffing out her chest, clearly expecting the officers to immediately march over and shut down Leo's little dream. Leo, meanwhile, had retreated slightly behind me, clutching the edge of my shirt, his earlier excitement replaced by a tremor of confusion. The two officers exchanged a glance, a flicker of something unreadable in their eyes. They nodded curtly to Mrs. Albright, then approached us, their demeanor professional but noticeably subdued. "Ma'am, we received a complaint about an unlicensed vendor operating a business here," the taller officer stated, his voice calm but firm. "We need to verify the legitimacy of this operation." My heart pounded, but I met his gaze steadily. This was it, the moment I had prepared for. "Of course, officer," I replied, my voice to my relief steady. I reached down, picked up the neat binder I had strategically placed beneath the table, and handed it to him. "Everything you need is right here." The officer took the binder, a wee etc, slight frown of curiosity on his face. He opened it, his eyes scanning the documents within. His partner leaned in, equally intrigued. As they flipped through the pages, the temporary recreational vending permit, the miner's business license, the health department's approval for temporary food service, even our liability insurance rider, their expressions underwent a remarkable transformation. The initial solemnity gave way to faint surprise, then a clear shift towards quiet amusement. They looked up, first at Leo's innocent face, then at Mrs. Albright, who was practically vibrating with anticipation, oblivious to the change in the air. The taller officer closed the binder, a faint smile playing on his lips. He handed it back to me. "Well, ma'am," he said, turning fully towards Mrs. Albright, his voice now carrying a distinct, almost pointed edge. "It appears everything here is perfectly in order. Your son has all the necessary city permits. This is a fully legitimate operation." Mrs. Albright's triumphant expression dissolved into a tableau of utter shock. Her mouth hung slightly open, her eyes darting between me, Leo, and the officers. "What? No, that's impossible. Those must be fake," she sputtered, her voice rising in disbelief. "They can't get all those permits for a mere lemonade stand. It's against the rules." The officers simply exchanged another look, this one containing a clear note of weary exasperation. "Ma'am," the second officer interjected, his tone firm, "our records confirm these permits are valid. We've investigated, and there's no violation here. You've wasted police resources with a false report." Mrs. Albright recoiled as if slapped, her face flushing a mottled red. A few of the neighbors who had gathered now stifled snickers, some even offering quiet, supportive nods to Leo. Mrs. Albright, utterly defeated and publicly humiliated, could only stammer incoherently, her grand moment of triumph crumbling into dust around her. The taller officer then turned back to Leo, a genuine, kind smile gracing his lips. "Hey there, young man," he said, bending down slightly. "Do you think I could get a glass of that perfectly legal lemonade?" Leo, eyes wide but now shining with dawning relief, nodded vigorously. The officers exchanged a final, withering glance at Mrs. Albright, who, looking like she'd swallowed a lemon whole, turned and retreated, her proud march now a humiliated scurry back towards her house. The street, moments ago tense with flashing lights, now echoed with the gentle clinking of coins and the happy chatter of customers, leaving Mrs. Albright to stew in her bitter defeat. The incident with the police exploded through the neighborhood, not just as gossip, but as a mini-local phenomenon. Someone had secretly filmed Mrs. Albright's meltdown, and it quickly found its way onto the community Facebook group, generating a tidal wave of likes, laughing emojis, and comments praising Leo as Willow Creek's legal lemonade prodigy. Instead of shutting him down, Mrs. Albright's theatrics had turned Leo's Lemonade Emporium into the most popular spot on the block. Kids from 3 streets over were riding their bikes just to buy a cup and get a glimpse of the now famous stand. Leo, completely unaware of the online frenzy, was simply thrilled. His cash box swelled, his dreams of buying blankets for kittens growing closer. He was beaming, thriving in the newfound attention, a stark contrast to the rapidly isolating Mrs. Albright. Her public humiliation festered into a venomous obsession. Neighbors now actively avoided her, crossing the street or looking away when she passed. Casual waves turned into stiff nods and polite greetings evaporated. She became a caricature, the lemonade stand Karen, a living embodiment of petty tyranny, defeated. This isolation, however, didn't curb her anger. It twisted it, pushing her further into a dark corner of malicious planning. We started noticing small, unsettling things. Our mail was occasionally left open, though nothing was ever missing. A stray garden gnome would mysteriously move from our flower bed to the edge of Mrs. Albright's lawn. These were minor, almost laughable annoyances, but they served as chilling reminders that she was watching, stewing, and planning. Knowing her escalating vindictiveness, I decided to take a proactive step. I quietly installed a small, high-definition security camera, disguised as a porch light facing our driveway and the lemonade stand. It was a subtle measure, one I hoped would never be needed, but a gut feeling told me it was necessary. Then, one warm evening, after Leo had packed up his stand and gone to bed, we heard a faint rustling outside. I dismissed it as an animal, but a nagging thought lingered. The next morning, as Leo excitedly went to set up, his bright smile instantly vanished. His meticulously painted Leo's Lemonade Emporium sign lay on the ground, snapped cleanly in. Half, and the small wooden cash box usually secured under the stand was gone. Panic flared, quickly followed by a cold, controlled fury. This wasn't just petty annoyance, this was outright vandalism and theft. Leo's eyes welled up, not just for the money, but for the destruction of his beloved creation. My sign. My money. For the kittens, he cried, his innocent world shattered. I knelt beside him, putting an arm around his trembling shoulders. Hey, I said, my voice softer than I felt. It's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. Inside, while Leo was distracted, I immediately went to my computer. My hands shook slightly as I accessed the security camera footage from the night before. I fast-forwarded through the quiet hours until a shadow flickered near the driveway. There, illuminated by the porch light, was Mrs. Albright. Her face was contorted in a sneer of pure satisfaction as she stealthily approached the stand. She wrenched the sign, snapping it with a sickening crack, then grabbed the cash box, stuffing it into her bag. For a moment, she looked directly into the camera, a triumphant, almost demonic glint in her eyes, utterly unaware that she was being recorded. My blood ran cold, but a steely resolve settled over me. She had crossed the line, and this wasn't just about a lemonade stand anymore. It was about criminal acts, targeting a child, and an utterly unjustified maliciousness, as the damning. Footage played on a loop. A chilling certainty formed in my mind. She thought she could destroy a dream. She didn't realize she was building her own prison. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady. Yes, I said into the receiver, my voice calm, resolute. I need to report a felony, and I have irrefutable video evidence. The following morning, the quiet calm of Willow Creek was shattered not by Mrs. Albright's complaints, but by the undeniable presence of justice. 2 police cruisers, lights flashing but sirens silent, pulled up to her meticulously manicured curb. This time, there was no theatrical pointing from Mrs. Albright. Instead, she emerged from her front door looking bewildered, then utterly horrified as the officers approached. They had reviewed the crystal-clear security footage from my disguised porch light, leaving no doubt about her actions. The evidence of vandalism and petty theft, meticulously captured, was irrefutable. As neighbors, drawn by the unusual spectacle, began to gather, one of the officers calmly explained the charges. Mrs. Albright's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, a pitiful realization of her complete downfall. She tried to stammer out excuses, to deny, to accuse us, but her words were hollow in the face of the damning video evidence. She was handcuffed, her protests growing louder and more desperate as she was led away in full view of the very community she had tried to control and terrorize. The sight of her being driven off in the back of a patrol car sent a collective sigh of relief, almost a ripple of quiet cheer, through the onlookers. The local news, having caught wind of the lemonade stand saga from the initial police incident, quickly picked up on Mrs. Albright's arrest. The story, now complete with the dramatic security footage, went viral on a national scale. Lemonade Stand Karen. Arrested for vandalism, the headline screamed, complete with screenshots of her sneering face from the video. She became a cautionary tale, a symbol of entitled behavior met with ultimate justice. In the aftermath, the community embraced Leo and his lemonade stand like never before. Neighbors organized a Leo's Lemonade Day, where dozens of children set up their own small stands in solidarity, all proceeds going to Leo's chosen animal shelter. The local news even featured a segment on it, highlighting Leo's resilience and the overwhelming kindness of the community. Leo, with his pure heart, not only replaced his stolen earnings but ended up donating enough money to buy mountains of blankets and food for the kittens, far exceeding his initial goal. His little stand, now rebuilt sturdier and brighter, became a symbol of simple joy triumphing over senseless malice. Mrs. Albright, facing charges for vandalism and theft, eventually settled out of court, forced to pay significant restitution for the damage to Leo's stand and his stolen earnings, along with hefty legal fees. Overwhelmed by the public shame and legal repercussions, and ostracized by a community that once tolerated her, she put her house up for sale and quietly moved away, never to be seen in Willow Creek again. The whole ordeal became a powerful lesson for us all. It taught Leo about resilience, the power of community, and the importance of standing up for what's right, even when faced with overwhelming negativity. For the rest of Willow Creek, it was a reminder that petty malice, left unchecked, can lead to devastating consequences, and that sometimes the sweetest victories are found in the simplest acts of defiance and the overwhelming support of a united neighborhood. Leo's Lemonade Emporium continues to operate every summer, a vibrant, beloved landmark, not just for its delicious lemonade but as a monument to kindness, permits, and the epic downfall of a Karen.